The General Hospital spoilers for Monday, August 18th, state that Britt Westbourne will perform a risky charade as Maxie Jones makes an emergency phone call. Jen Sidwell's love life will also be tumultuous, so let's chat about what to expect on the ABC soap. At home and heart, Maxie will issue an SOS to Martin Gray, who will rush over for an urgent meeting. Maxie will really consider going against her partner's stated wishes, so she'll want to know if she can be dumped at deception. Maxie may be willing to turn over the evidence against Sonny Corinthos to the cops, which presents a problem for Sidwell. It's possible that Sidwell may take dramatic measures to neutralize Maxie, which could lead to kidnapping drama. Sidwell, on the other hand, will keep his actual feelings for Lucy Coe under wraps. Although there is mutual interest here, Sidwell will find it difficult to be open about their relationship. Brooke Lynn Quartermaine will struggle with honesty as well. Brooke Lynn still holds a grudge against Lois Cerullo for lying about Giovanni Gio Palmieri, but someone will think she's being too harsh on her mother. That someone could be Flora Gardens, who had a lengthy talk with Lois before returning to Bensonhurst. Flora may speak with Brooke Lynn this time, and persuade her to improve her mother-daughter bond with Lois. At Sonny's house, he will respond to Drew Kane's ferocious threat. Drew is willing to put Michael Corinthos in jail for assault if Sonny does not follow orders. Drew will want to leverage this scenario to Willow Tate's advantage, but Sonny will be outraged. Something tells me that eavesdropping ADA Justine Turner may come out and surprise Sonny by putting Drew in his place. Jordan Ashford will see Stella Henry in hot water on GH, therefore it appears she will call Curtis Ashford to keep him updated on the fraud inquiry. Curtis will inform Portia Robinson of the scary news, and will most likely rush to the hospital shortly thereafter. Stella will become agitated due to the impending grilling, and based on some other upcoming GH spoilers, she may experience a medical crisis as a result. Britt will summon Jason Morgan to accompany her to Dalmatia, where she will attempt to entice him away from Pascal and provide an explanation. Britt, on the other hand, will find herself in a pickle and forced to carry out a risky charade, so Jason may have to go along with whatever she comes up with. Meanwhile, it appears that Jocelyn Jacks will successfully defeat the man attacking Vaughn, and leave him impressed. According to General Hospital spoilers, Vaughn and Jocelyn will collaborate on some further bold actions later this week, August 18th to 22nd, so don't miss out on all the drama. General Hospital spoilers hint at a seismic shift in Dubrovnik, and this week's General Hospital Weekly Preview promises a life-changing moment as Jason Morgan locks eyes with Britt Westbourne across the Five Poppies Dalmatia hotel lobby. Both assumed dead, Jason from a 2021 tunnel collapse in Greece, Britt from Heather Weber's 2023 poisoned hook. They must confront their shared survival. We've been waiting for this moment ever since Jason noticed Britt in the Paris airport. The time has finally come, and we're glad it wasn't a long, slow burn that JH dragged out across months. Complicating matters, Agent Vaughn's clandestine WSB mission partner, Jocelyn Josh Jacks, is staying at the same hotel. Will their reunion generate strong feelings, lead to awkwardness, or cause Britt to hide? A shocking reunion shakes Jason and Britt. The GH trailer previews Jason and Britt's electrifying eye lock, confirming their existence, and fans are ecstatic. Their lighthouse romance, cut short by their deaths, may rekindle, but Britt's covert life under concierge Pascal's supervision, presumably linked to a mysterious boss like her father Caesar Faison, complicates matters. Joss' appearance as a bride for the WSB risks exposing Britt's hiding. Fans predict whether Britt would flee to avoid Jason, or if their shared history will inspire instant desire. Her Paris excursion promises some freedom, but will she inform Pascal or her guardian of Jason's arrival? Joss' mission collides with Britt's secret. The stakes rise as Joss, unknowing of Britt's survival, navigates her WSB mission at the hotel, risking running into Jason and Britt's life-changing reunion. We're wondering if Britt will hint at being trapped, as Jason fears and Anna Devane suggests is conceivable, or if she'll keep quiet to maintain her arrangement. The encounter could either be unpleasant, Britt dodging Jason's questions, Jason reeling at her survival, or erupt into blazing passion, rekindling their bond on the spot. Pascal may catch on and warn Britt's supervisor, while Anna secretly monitors Joss' movements and whatever is going on in Croatia via WSB chief Jack Brennan's few comments. Will Britt divulge her limits or keep Jason at arm's length to conceal her secret? Will their reunion be defined by passion or peril? As Jason and Britt's life-changing encounter unfolds, the fanbase is eager to see whether their reunion will spark love or reveal secrets. Joss' mission might quickly transform this sensitive scenario into a dumpster fire, exposing both parties. Britt's secret may protect her, or doom them all. We crave the intensity we saw between Britt and Jason years ago, but we also want everyone to come out alive. Britt Westbourne had never shied away from taking risks. For as long as anybody in Port Charles could remember, she had skated the line between genius and recklessness, unable to separate her heart from the chaos that resulted from her choices. But this time the stakes were bigger than ever. The charade she had decided to carry out threatened not just her reputation, but also her life. She had told herself it was important, that fooling those closest to her was the only way to protect them, and perhaps in some strange way herself. The mask she wore every day was polished and faultless, but beneath her assurance lay a discomfort that grew more with each passing hour. She could feel the falsehood seeping into her system, blending with each heartbeat, leaving her unsure where the reality began and her fiction stopped. What worried her was not just the threat of being discovered, but also the awareness that if her secret was revealed, it would ruin the fragile connections she had worked so hard to establish. Britt had been offered second chances to prove she wasn't the manipulative, heartless lady people thought she was. She had discovered glimpses of redemption and companionship, in fleeting moments of love, and on the rare occasions when she allowed herself to believe she was capable of change. As she continued her deadly ruse, she feared that all might crumble in an instant. What made matters worse was that she didn't have anyone she could fully confide in. Jason, who had previously been her anchor in the storm, was now out of reach, lost in his own shadow. Meanwhile, Maxie Jones was experiencing her own nightmare. For months she had lived on the brink of tension, attempting to juggle her children, her profession, and the constant worry that her life would crumble at any moment. She had always been a lady of vitality, charisma, and determination, but the constant barrage of crises had worn her down. Then came the emergency which would change everything. It began as a searing pain, sudden and unexpected, blasting through her as she attempted to get through another hectic day. She told herself it was tiredness, the toll of stress, but within hours she slumped, her body giving in to the burden it had carried for far too long. When word circulated around General Hospital that Maxie had been transported to the ER, the panic was palpable. Friends and family flocked to her side, each with their own guilt and silent prayers. Felicia tried to remain strong, believing that her daughter was stronger than this, but her hands trembled as she sought for Max. Georgie, who was too young to understand, clutched to her grandmother, her eyes wide with horror. Maxie's children required her, and at such moments, everyone knew how vulnerable she truly was. Even Brooklyn, who had sparred with Maxie more than she wanted to admit, felt her throat constrict with remorse. She had believed Maxie would always come back, always persevere. Seeing her pal in such a vulnerable state hit deep. When Britt heard the news, she felt the ground shift beneath her feet. Her initial inclination was to hurry to Maxie's side, but she stopped in the corridor outside the room, stunned by the weight of her own deception. She felt that being there, seeing into Maxie's terrified eyes, would reveal her lies. Nonetheless, her conscience urged her to relocate, to be the friend Maxie required, even if it meant risking everything. She took a deep breath and strode into the room, wearing her deception like armor, hoping no one could see through the flaws. While Maxie's emergency wreaked havoc throughout the hospital, another storm was brewing in the most unlikely of hearts. Sidwell was not a man who was frequently mentioned in whispers around town, but those who knew him recognized that his love life was a tangled web of longing and regret. He had once loved truly, in a way that seared his soul, and since then, he had fallen from one relationship to the next, attempting to fill the vacuum left behind. His melancholy was not loud or dramatic like so many others in Port Charles, but it was consistent and quiet, the type that lasted in his eyes long after the laughter in the room faded. His most recent relationship had began with Promise, a woman who appeared to comprehend his damaged heart. For a while, Sidwell thought he could start over, rewrite the painful chapters of his past with someone who saw him for who he actually was. But love, as it frequently did for him, twisted into something complex. She had secrets of her own, and their lives intertwined in ways that neither could predict. Arguments faded into silence, then distance and finally treachery. Sidwell found himself once more standing on the brink of a broken relationship, staring into the pit of loneliness that had become all too familiar. What made it awful was that his narrative was more than just one of love loss. It was also one of desertion, with familial ties broken too young. The lady he had previously hoped to start a life with had not only abandoned him, but she had also taken with her the dreams he had woven together with delicate optimism. Years later, the echoes of that tragedy continued to torment him, and now, as he attempted and failed to navigate this latest quagmire, he wondered if he was condemned to suffer the same heartbreak indefinitely. He kept his melancholy hidden, rarely spoke about it, but those who looked closely could sense the weight crushing down on him. As Britt stood by Maxie's hospital bed, Sidwell wandered the same halls, deep in meditation. Their paths intersected frequently, two wounded souls going in the same orbit. Britt caught his stare, and for a little moment, she saw in him a mirror of her own conflict. They exchanged a polite nod, yet there was an unsaid agreement between them. They both knew what it was like to bury their suffering behind a mask, to go through life trying to be stronger than they were. The hours passed as physicians attempted to stabilize Maxie. Friends sat in the waiting room, agitated and scared. Spinelli strode back and forth, reciting computations under his breath, as if numbers could forecast the future. Brooklyn grabbed Chase's hand hard, but she refused to admit she needed the comfort. Felicia whispered prayers she hadn't said in years, begging the cosmos not to take away her daughter. When Maxie was eventually declared stable, the relief was immense. Tears flowed freely, embraces were exchanged, and everyone took a minute to breathe again. However, the fright left its imprint. Maxie needed time to recover, and she couldn't ignore the toll stress and secrets had taken on her. She secretly promised that she would make adjustments and would no longer sacrifice herself in order to keep everything together. Britt stayed outside the room long after everyone else had left, watching Maxie sleep. She felt relieved and ashamed, knowing that her own falsehoods could one day put Maxie in danger. The weight of her charade pressed down harder than ever, and she worried how much longer she could hold out until the truth was revealed. The night did not bring Sidwell any relief. He roamed the quiet corridors, his thoughts repeating every mistake and tragedy. He came to a halt outside the chapel, where many people in Port Charles went when they had no other options. Sitting in the pew, he allowed the sadness to wash over him. He mumbled apologies to the ghosts of his past, making promises he knew he couldn't keep. He was weary of being the man who loved too much and lost everything, but he didn't know how to stop the cycle. Life at Port Charles had a way of intertwining stories, bringing together people whose lives were so different on the surface yet shared the same challenges beneath. Britt's perilous farce, Maxie's brush with death, and Sidwell's broken heart all contributed to the same tapestry of grief, resilience, and the desperate faith that tomorrow would be better. Britt got home that night and stood alone in front of the mirror. She examined her reflection, the rehearsed grin, and the confident posture. Nothing felt genuine anymore. She wanted to remove the act and let people see the vulnerable woman beneath, but fear held her back. She whispered Jason's name, a habit she had not broken even after he had left, and let the tears she had been holding back to fall. Maxie moved in her hospital bed, groping for her phone in the dark. She opened the photo album and began scrolling through images of her children. Her heart ached from love and regret. She had gone dangerously near to abandoning them, so she vowed herself she would fight with everything she had to stay. She texted Spinelli a simple message, "Thank you for being here." She knew he'd never stop loving her, and while she couldn't give him the future he'd hoped for, his presence had always served as a safety net. Sidwell remained in the chapel well into the night. The candles flickered and the silence was thick. He finally straightened his shoulders and stepped outside into the cool air. Deep down he felt his narrative was far from over. Sadness was a part of him, but it didn't define him. Maybe, just maybe, he could find a way to write another chapter. And thus the night passed, full of terror, meditation and fragile hope. Tomorrow in Port Charles would bring new secrets, grief and opportunities for redemption. But for Britt, Maxie and Sidwell, the decisions they made and the anguish they carried would linger, affecting their future courses in ways they couldn't have imagined. Jason never expected to find himself standing at the edge of the Adriatic coast again, But fate had a way of drawing him back into the darkness he thought he had left behind. The steep cliffs of Croatia contained more than just memories of previous operations. They were now the setting for something far more intricate. Britt Westbourne stood across from him, her eyes hardened with betrayal, hope, and a weakness she didn't want to show. Their conflict was more than just survival in a foreign nation. It was about whether they could trust each other with the truth, or whether the lies that had followed them across continents would finally dissolve whatever frail link they had managed to form. The tension between them was palpable, heavy as fog rolling off the ocean. Britt had been trying to read Jason since they first landed, but Jason's ability to conceal his emotions was unrivaled. He gave nothing away, yet his quiet spoke more than any words. Britt, on the other hand, was not the type to sit back and do nothing, especially when her heart was at stake. She had already put too much on the line, her profession, her life, and her tenuous hold on hope, to walk blindly into another of Jason's secrets. Jason, for his part, realized the stakes were bigger than either of them wanted to admit. If the wrong word was said or the wrong fact was revealed, they would not only jeopardize their own safety, but also that of others. They had only just become allies out of necessity, two persons brought together by circumstance. Britt had given Jason a lifeline when no one else would, and Jason had protected her when danger approached. Something more had formed between them in the midst of dodging gunfire, unraveling perilous webs of falsehoods, and fleeing foes they couldn't see. It wasn't love in the classic sense yet, but it was undeniable. Every glance, touch, and moment spent in close quarters wore down the barriers Jason placed around himself and softened the sharp edges Britt employed as armor. But in Croatia, standing face to face with truths neither was willing to reveal, everything threatened to crumble. Britt's voice sounded stern as she finally broke the stillness. She had always been fiery, unafraid to question him, and Jason admired that aspect of her most. Do you think you can just stand there and shut me out, as if I should accept whatever half-truth you're ready to give me? Not this time, Jason. Not here. Her words sliced through the tension, but Jason didn't move. He took the blow, his jaw stiffening and his eyes darting away just long enough for her to realize she'd hit a nerve. Jason was not afraid of physical battles, he could handle them. He had spent his life fighting foes both openly and in the shadows. However, when confronted with Britt's desire for honesty, he was put into a corner from which he was unsure he could emerge undamaged. He wanted to protect her, but that meant keeping her in the dark. At the same time, a part of him that had grown to care for her more profoundly than he meant whispered that perhaps she deserved the truth. Maybe she was strong enough to deal with whatever he was hiding. But secrets had consequences, and Jason understood better than anyone how terrible the truth might be. Britt wasn't simply another individual trapped in one of his perilous realms. She had her own issues, a background full of lies and betrayals that had twisted her into someone who was wary of trusting others. Her presence here, seeking the truth from him, indicated that she believed he could provide her with something no one else could: honesty. That belief worried Jason almost as much as it reawakened something long suppressed within him. As they stood in the dying Croatian sunlight, memories of previous encounters flooded back. Jason remembered Britt's voice breaking when she revealed she had inherited Huntington's disease, her fear of the future barely disguised by her customary bravado. He had been there, silent yet steady, providing consolation without passing judgment. And Britt remembered how Jason was willing to risk his life to keep her safe from Cyrus Renault's clutches, even though it would have been easier to walk away. Those moments had laid the groundwork for something neither of them had wanted to admit, but now, standing on unknown ground, they couldn't deny that their relationship was about more than just survival. The conflict between them was more than just the secrets Jason kept. It was about the prospect of something genuine in a world in which neither of them had ever really trusted. Britt had been injured by too many falsehoods, and Jason had lived his life behind a wall of quiet, pushing away anybody who tried to approach. Their fight today was whether they could overcome those patterns or revert to previous behaviors that kept them secluded and alone. Jason's voice was low when he eventually spoke, carrying the weight of what he couldn't say. It's not that simple, Britt. He wanted to tell her everything, but how? There were names, transactions, betrayals, and layers of danger she couldn't even fathom. Revealing the truth could put her in much more danger than she already was. However, as he peered into her eyes, He recognized the sorrow of someone who had been lied to too many times. If he locked her out again, he might lose her forever. Britt crossed her arms, her body tight with defiance. It is always the same with you. You think silence keeps me safe, but it only proves that I can't rely on you to let me in. And if I can't rely on you, what are we doing here? Her comments had the sting of truth that Jason could not ignore. She was not asking for perfection. She was not asking him to entirely reveal his soul. She just wanted to know that whatever they were building wasn't a house of cards that would collapse the moment another secret was revealed. The waves slammed against the rocks below, breaking the deep silence between them. Jason's reaction was to hold her close, reassuring her via actions rather than words. But this time, he understood that deeds would be insufficient. Britt had placed her heart on the line, and she deserved better than the cautious quiet he had always maintained. Still he paused, knowing that once he spoke, there was no coming back. What neither of them recognized was that their confrontation in Croatia was not solely about them. There were forces moving in the shadows, waiting for fissures to form between them. Enemies knew that Jason's weak point had always been the people he cared about, and Britt's presence by his side made her a target. If their relationship broke here, it may cost them their lives. The challenge before them wasn't just whether love or secrets would triumph. The question was whether they could blend both without harming themselves in the process. Jason has spent his life sacrificing parts of himself to ensure the safety of others. Britt had spent her time trying to be seen past her mistakes. They stood on the verge of something that may change both of their lives forever. As the twilight shadows deepened, Britt's visage softened slightly, but her voice remained hard. You don't need to tell me everything, Jason. I just need to know that when it counts, you'll choose me. Not the secret. Not the silence. Jason's heart clenched as she spoke. He'd always chosen duty, devotion, and survival. But for the first time in a long time, he wondered if it was time to try something new. Something that appeared to be hopeful, trustworthy, and loving. The Croatian coast extended eternally behind them, a great symbol for the uncertain future they faced. Whether their relationship would endure hinged on decisions they hadn't made yet, truths they hadn't spoken, and the willingness to risk all. Love and secrets rarely coexisted without cost, but as Jason gazed at Britt, he knew he might finally be willing to pay the price for her and them. The world around them was full of danger, and their next step may change everything. But at this point on this distant shore, Jason and Britt were more than just fugitives or allies tied by necessity. They were two souls at a crossroads, daring to conceive a life in which trust was not a burden, but rather the foundation of something genuine. Whether love or secrets triumphed remained unknown, but one thing was certain. Neither Jason nor Britt would ever be the same after Croatia. The confrontation had sparked something visceral and obvious, a fire that might either burn them alive or illuminate the path ahead. And as Jason reached for her hand, tentative but solid, Britt realized that no matter what perils awaited them, the decision to fight for each other had already been taken.